Welcome to the Reddit mic. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where the people closest to you, your own family, act in ways that are just, well, bewildering, or perhaps deeply, deeply hurtful? Today, we're diving headfirst into the often murky waters of family relationships, specifically focusing on what happens when love and family become shields for incredibly toxic behavior, turning what should be a haven into, well, a battlefield.
Sometimes by setting the most difficult boundaries imaginable, we'll be looking at the subtle and not so subtle ways family bonds can be weaponized and the remarkable resilience it takes to reclaim one's own well-being.
Yeah. Resilience is key here. We've gathered a stack of truly compelling stories from Reddit's Best of Redditor updates. It's really a treasure trove of raw human experience. And these aren't just fleeting anecdotes, they're detailed sagas, people grappling with profound betrayal, relentless control, and that agonizing decision to prioritize their own mental and emotional health over a deeply dysfunctional family unit. You'll hear about so-called pranks that were, in reality, calculated acts of cruelty, goodbyes that were actively and maliciously denied, and secrets that shattered trust in the most fundamental ways. These stories really challenge our preconceived notions of what family should be, and they offer powerful lessons in self-preservation. So let's jump in and explore these intricate dynamics. All right, our first story. It introduces us to a 27-year-old who had just achieved a massive milestone, buying their first home. After years of intense saving and sacrifice, imagine that palpable pride, the immense excitement, the sheer relief after such a significant achievement. They wanted to share this monumental moment with their family, even though, well, their relationship had always been a bit rocky, marked by what the original poster described as a deeply unsettling family philosophy, which was, any joke is fine as long as someone laughs, no matter who gets hurt.
Wow.
Yeah. That isn't just a philosophy, it's a huge red flag waving in the wind, isn't it? It signals an environment where empathy is just, sacrifice for entertainment, and personal boundaries are basically non-existent.
Exactly. It immediately forces us to ask, where exactly is the line, between playful teasing and outright malice? In this instance, the family didn't just cross it, they obliterated it with a truly cruel prank. The siblings, aged 30 and 25, presented this legal-looking notice, complete with official letterhead stating the home purchase was canceled due to a clerical error and the house is being sold to someone else. The sheer detail of this deception is chilling. It's clearly designed to inflict maximum distress and then, be brushed off as just humor.
Right, like, oops, just kidding, after you've crushed someone.
Precisely. This wasn't a casual joke. It was meticulously planned with fabricated documents to appear legitimate, amplifying the shock and pain. And looking at these Reddit threads, it's a common tactic, actually, using official-looking things or elaborate setups to make the deception feel real, intensifying the victim's panic and despair.
And what happened next is where the mask of humor truly falls away, right? The original poster's reaction, immediate, heartbreaking tears, just devastating, raw emotion. And the family's response, they didn't console, they laughed.
Laughed?
Yeah, even worse, they recorded it on their phones to post on social media yelling, "Gotcha!" When confronted, their dismissive reply was, "You're so sensitive, it was just a prank, lighten up." It's just profoundly difficult to imagine experiencing such a huge personal achievement only for it to be deliberately sabotaged and then mocked by the very people you expected to share your joy with. And the recording for social media, that adds this whole other layer of public humiliation, turning a private moment of vulnerability into content for their amusement.
Absolutely. The true tell of a toxic prank isn't the initial shock, but the perpetrator's reaction to your tears. If they laugh, it's not a joke.
Yeah.
It's an attack masked as humor.
That's such a clear distinction.
It is. And this is a classic form of emotional manipulation, often called gaslighting, right? Where someone makes you doubt your own reality or perceptions. The "it was just a joke" line functions to invalidate the victim's emotional response and shift blame. It forces the person who is hurt into this position of appearing overly sensitive, when in reality their pain is a direct and intended outcome of the prank. The joy for the perpetrators clearly came from the victim's distress. And like many insightful commenters on the original post pointed out, a true prank involves everyone laughing in the end. When the target is in tears, panicking, or deeply hurt, it ceases to be a joke. It becomes an act of aggression.
Aggression, yeah.
It highlights a fundamental lack of empathy, where the emotional suffering of another isn't a consequence to be avoided, but it's the punchline itself. It speaks to a deep-seated desire for power and control.
And this wasn't an isolated incident, which just makes the pattern even more alarming. The original poster revealed whole history of these so-called pranks, like ruining a job interview outfit with accidentally spilled coffee, or pretending to lose their dog just to see them panic.
Oh my God.
Right. These aren't jokes. They're calculated acts of humiliation and cruelty. It reveals this consistent pattern of behavior designed to keep the original poster in a constant state of anxiety or distress. Imagine preparing for a crucial job interview, only to have your carefully chosen outfit ruined, not by accident, but by a deliberate act disguised as clumsiness.
Horrible.
Or the sheer terror of believing your beloved pet is lost, only to discover it was a cruel charade. These incidents illustrate a deeply ingrained pattern of manipulation and control, where the siblings consistently push the boundaries of what's acceptable, always at the original poster's expense, and always with that same dismissive rationalization. Lighten up.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this persistent pattern suggests a deeper family dysfunction. The term crabs in a bucket comes to mind here.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine a bucket of crabs, right? If one tries to climb out, the others pull it back down. That's crabs in a bucket. A dynamic where family members actively undermine or pull down anyone who achieves success or tries to rise above the established pecking order. The original poster's success in buying a home seems to have triggered this need in the siblings to take them down a notch, as some astute commenters observed.
That makes so much sense. It wasn't about the joke, it was about the success.
Exactly. This isn't just about pranks. It's about maintaining a specific unhealthy power dynamic where one person is consistently the punching bag or scapegoat. When the original poster started achieving milestones, like buying a house or even pursuing a career, it threatened the siblings' sense of control, or maybe just highlighted their own insecurities. Their actions were a subconscious or maybe even conscious effort to ensure the original poster never truly felt superior or independent.
So what did this all mean for the original poster? After the house prank, they quietly, decisively went no contact, no dramatic announcement, no big arguments, just stopped responding.
Smart move, probably.
But the family, predictably, didn't take it lying down. Guilt-tripping messages from extended family poured in, accusing them of tearing the family apart. Even their mother left crying voicemails begging them to return. This sounds less like genuine concern and more like emotional blackmail disguised as concern, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The silence for the original poster was met with this chorus of manufactured outrage, designed to make them feel responsible for the family's perceived breakdown.
Yeah.
This isn't about healthy reconciliation. It's about the family losing their designated punching bag and wanting them back in that role. Like one Reddit user put it really insightfully, they said, they need their punching bag. No one will take their bullshit, so they got desperate to have OOP back to keep bullying her.
Wow. Blunt, but probably true.
Yeah. And the mother's crying voicemails likely weren't about truly missing her child, but about the uncomfortable realization that without the original poster of the lightning rod, the dysfunction might now turn inward or expose cracks she'd rather ignore.
Things quickly escalated from there, right?
Yeah, they did. The siblings started showing up uninvited at the original poster's new home, banging on the door, yelling things like, "She can't take a joke, and let's see how long she can hide."
That's terrifying.
It is. This progression from emotional manipulation to outright harassment and eventually property damage signifies a dangerous shift. It demonstrates a complete disregard for boundaries, even legal ones. The siblings were so invested in maintaining their punching bag role for the original poster that they resorted to illegal acts. Their actions, banging on the door, yelling, were not attempts at genuine reconciliation, but continued harassment. Then came the final straw. Their security camera caught the siblings egging the original poster's car overnight.
Egging the car, okay.
This move from psychological torment to tangible harm is a clear indicator that their behavior had entered a realm beyond mere dysfunction. It was leaning into criminal harassment. And it raises that important question: why do some families refuse to respect boundaries, even when faced with clear and escalating consequences? It suggests maybe a profound level of arrested development, where their emotional maturity never quite caught up with their physical age, leaving them unable to process adult emotions or responsibilities.
So the original poster, realizing they couldn't handle it alone and that their safety was genuinely at risk, went to the police. A report for harassment was filed, the siblings were warned, and their reaction: more mocking messages calling the original poster a snitch.
Of course, zero remorse.
Zero. But this was just the beginning of the legal journey and a crucial turning point for the original poster. It's a stark reminder that when dealing with truly toxic individuals, sometimes the only language they understand is the language of consequences. The original poster tried to avoid drama, just fade away, but their family's escalation forced their hand into a formal, legal response. It's infuriating to see the siblings' continued audacity, treating a police warning as something to brag about.
Right.
Further solidifying their refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing, it demonstrates their deep-seated delusion and the extent to which they were committed to their abusive dynamic, completely failing to grasp the severity of their actions.
And the fact that law enforcement took action, that really underscores the severity here. Police and courts don't typically intervene in harmless pranks. The continued escalation trespassing, leaving a mess of toilet paper and shaving cream on the driveway, demonstrated a pattern that could not be ignored. This is a crucial point. Documentation, security footage, text messages, police reports, it was all vital for the next step. It provided irrefutable evidence of a pattern of harassment.
Which they needed.
Absolutely. And it's a powerful illustration of that adage. You are not obligated to tolerate mistreatment just because it comes from family. The original poster's journey highlights that sometimes legal boundaries are the only effective way to protect oneself from persistent emotional and physical harassment.
And that's exactly what happened next. After these repeated violations, the original poster went back to the police and filed for a restraining order, and with ample evidence, the judge granted it. The siblings were legally ordered to stay away from the original poster, their home, their workplace, and for the first time in a long time, the harassment finally stopped.
Peace.
Finally. Despite some family members still not understanding, the original poster embraced their decision with this powerful declaration: "I'd rather be a snitch than a doormat." That sentiment just perfectly encapsulates the profound shift, doesn't it? From victim to empowered individual.
It really does.
It's remarkable to witness someone move from being a perpetual target to actively building a fortress of peace around themselves, using the tools of the law to achieve a freedom they were denied for so long.
Yeah, the restraining order wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a psychological barrier. It finally forced the siblings to cease their harmful behavior, allowing the original poster to transform their home from a place of anxiety into a place of peace.
Okay, our next deep dive. This one takes us into the profound pain of family exclusion during a time of grief. Our original poster, a grandchild, had a strained relationship with their father, years of emotional abuse, but had tried diligently to maintain a connection with their paternal grandparents who lived states away. This is a common and heartbreaking dilemma, isn't it? When one part of your family is toxic, but you still cherish connections with others within that same unit.
It's incredibly difficult, that emotional tightrope walk, trying to preserve meaningful bonds while navigating deep-seated dysfunction. The original poster clearly valued their relationship with their grandfather despite the geographical distance and the painful relationship with their father. They actively sought to bridge that gap, making regular calls, sending messages, which makes the subsequent events even more cruel.
Yeah, the effort they put in is key context.
It is. This initial setup is critical. It shows an individual attempting to preserve a meaningful bond despite a difficult parent, highlighting the independent nature of certain family relationships. The grandfather, battling cancer, became increasingly unwell, and the original poster would call multiple times a month, send messages of love, ask to speak to him. However, the grandmother consistently made excuses, preventing them from speaking directly.
The gatekeeper.
Exactly. This gatekeeping of access to the dying grandfather is the first major red flag, an insidious form of control. It begs the question of why the grandmother would intentionally obstruct these calls, especially when the original poster expressed consistent love and concern. Was it to control the narrative? To manipulate the grandfather's perceptions? Or perhaps protect her own interests, as we might see later? The grandfather was described as a man of few words, which could have made him more susceptible to manipulation by those constantly around him, especially if his health was failing and his voice was weak. The original poster's consistent attempts to connect, saying things like, "Tell him I called, that I love him and miss him," are just heartbreaking in retrospect. As we learn, those messages might never have truly reached him or been reciprocated in his final days.
God, that's awful. And then the devastating news came via text from an aunt. The grandfather had passed. No viewing, no funeral, just cremation.
A text message for that news.
A text, which already signals a lack of care and inclusion. But then, the cruel twist. The father told the original poster that their grandfather died disappointed because they hadn't spoken. To pile that on, twisting the knife by suggesting the dying grandfather was disappointed, for circumstances largely orchestrated by the family's own gatekeeping. It's just an act of profound psychological abuse.
It really is. It's a classic manipulation tactic, weaponizing grief and perceived disapproval to inflict maximum emotional pain and guilt. It's not about honoring the deceased. It's about perpetuating existing family resentments and control, further isolating the original poster in their grief.
And what's truly shocking, what the original poster eventually uncovered, is the sheer depth of this family's deliberate exclusion. When the original poster called their grandmother to check in, she revealed a shocking detail. The grandfather had scheduled a medically assisted suicide, a death with dignity, for 2 days after he actually passed.
Wait, scheduled after he died?
He died before the scheduled date, but the entire paternal family, father, aunts, uncles, cousin, had gathered the weekend before for goodbyes. The original poster was never informed.
Never told. About the plan? About the gathering? Nothing.
Nothing.
This raises an incredibly important question. Why was this critical information withheld? And how could an entire family collude in such a devastating act of exclusion? The family even declined to administer medication to extend his life for a few hours, claiming he wouldn't have wanted that, effectively denying the original poster any chance, even a phone call, for a final farewell. The emotional impact of this. Discovering a planned, peaceful departure was intentionally kept from you. It's immense. It speaks to a profound level of control and exclusion within this family system, a systemic refusal to allow the original poster any part in this sacred final rite.
And when the original poster confronted their aunt about this horrifying revelation, the aunt claimed she and other siblings didn't know about the assisted suicide plan until after the death, which seems unlikely given the gathering.
Highly unlikely.
Right. And then she dismissed the original poster's connection to the grandfather with this chilling lack of empathy, saying, realistically, how much of a part of your life was he? I wouldn't let somebody that didn't have that much of an impact on your life while he was alive have an impact on your life now that he's gone.
Wow. That's blatant gaslighting. Trying to minimize legitimate grief and deny a valid relationship. It forces the original poster to question their own memories and feelings, a common tactic in toxic families. The fact that the entire paternal family gathered for goodbyes and no one thought to inform the original poster or even facilitate a brief phone call, it speaks volumes about their collective dysfunction and complicity in this act of profound exclusion. It highlights the insidious nature of familial control, where narratives are rewritten and emotional connections are selectively acknowledged or erased.
And it gets worse. Months later, while looking at obituaries for cold cases for work, a truly unexpected twist.
For work, wow.
Yeah. Our original poster had a chilling realization. They couldn't find their own grandfather's obituary online, despite having all the details. After several persistent conversations with the funeral home, the truth emerged. Someone in the family had removed the original poster's name from the obituary, and later requested it be taken off the website entirely. The grandfather was now listed as survived by only one grandchild, the cousin.
Oh my God, that is ultimate erasure, designed to rewrite history and deny a person's very existence within the family narrative. It's a deeply petty and cruel move that goes beyond simply withholding information. It's an active attempt to invalidate the original poster's relationship with their grandfather. This kind of malevolent act is often driven by deep-seated resentment, control, or even, as some commenters shrewdly speculated, potential inheritance issues.
The money angle.
Yeah. A desire to reduce the number of heirs, especially if a will might simply state, "my grandchildren," without specific names. This raises a crucial question. What level of malice drives someone to actively erase a living family member from a deceased loved one's public record? It suggests a profound and calculated desire to completely disown the original poster, perhaps fueled by the father's existing resentment over the original poster's low contact with him.
The thought of confronting them about this level of deep-seated malice just felt utterly futile to the original poster, who instead decided to lean on their mother's side of the family and continue therapy, which highlights the painful reality that sometimes reconciliation just isn't possible, right? And self-preservation means accepting that you might never get the answers or accountability you seek from certain family members. What stands out to you about this deliberate attempt to erase someone from a family's history? It's just staggering.
It really is staggering. It's a powerful testament to the fact that peace often means recognizing when a battle isn't worth fighting, especially when the other side is so committed to their toxic narrative and unwilling to acknowledge any wrongdoing. The original poster's decision to prioritize their mental health and seek support outside of that immediate dysfunctional family demonstrates incredible strength and self-awareness. In the face of profound cruelty, Their path shows that choosing not to engage in a never-ending cycle of conflict can be the most courageous act of all.
Okay, our final deep dive. This brings us to a 49-year-old mother reeling from a devastating double betrayal. Not only did she discover her husband of 20 years had been having a 2-year affair, but her 22-year-old daughter knew about it the entire time and actively hid it, lying and covering for her father.
Oh, wow. That's rough.
Yeah. The pain of her husband's infidelity was immense, a complete shattering of her marital foundation. But her daughter's complicity was almost as devastating, a profound wound from within her most trusted circle. Imagine the emotional whiplash, discovering your entire marital foundation was a lie, only to then realize your own child was an active participant in that deception.
It shatters not just a marriage, but the very fabric of trust within the family unit, leaving the mother feeling isolated and profoundly hurt by the two people closest to her.
Exactly.
And this situation is incredibly complex. Layers of betrayal and manipulation within the most intimate relationships. The mother initially distanced herself, needing space to heal, which is a natural and healthy response to such profound hurt. However, this emotional distance was quickly misconstrued by the daughter. The daughter's reaction, interpreting her mother's need for space as abandonment or a deliberate act of shutting her out. It reveals a deeply self-centered perspective.
Right, like how dare you need space after we betrayed you?
Precisely. This initial misinterpretation sets the stage for further conflict, as the daughter is unable or unwilling to see her mother's pain as a consequence of her and her father's actions. Instead, she frames herself as the victim, which is a common psychological defense mechanism in dysfunctional relationships where accountability is actively avoided. This pattern of shifting blame suggests a real lack of personal responsibility.
So 1.5 years later, the mother started dating. And after a Disney trip with her new boyfriend, his daughter, and her own son, her daughter saw a social media photo. This sparked an angry, tearful call from the daughter, accusing her mother of replacing her and demanding she get over it.
Get over it after 1.5 years.
Right, and even the ex-husband called, furious, accusing the mother of leaving their daughter for a younger man and a new family, which is just a classic case of projection, isn't it?
Absolutely. He's accusing his ex-wife of the very thing he himself had done, attributing his own undesirable traits to someone else. This outburst reveals a deeply unsettling sense of entitlement and a complete lack of self-awareness from the daughter. It's not about the mother's healing or new happiness. It's about the daughter's perception of being replaced or losing control over her mother's life. And the ex-husband's phone call is pure hypocrisy, a desperate attempt to shift blame and maintain a narrative where he is the wronged party. Despite being the architect of the family's original breakdown, it perfectly illustrates how toxic individuals will weaponize perceived slights to avoid confronting their own culpability.
Okay, but what's crucial here and fundamentally shifts our understanding is that the daughter was 17 when she first learned of the affair. But this wasn't the first time she had engaged in deeply problematic behavior. The mother revealed a shocking incident from her daughter's past. She had bullied another child so severely that it pushed another girl so far that she almost did something irreversible, leading to the daughter's expulsion from school.
Oh my goodness, that's serious.
Extremely serious. The mother, having been a victim of bullying herself, tried to implement strict consequences. Grounding, taking away electronics, monitoring online activity, volunteering, therapy, trying to teach accountability.
Which sounds like responsible parenting, given the severity.
Right. But the daughter's subsequent confession that part of her decision to hide the affair was fueled by a desire to get back at me for the past discipline. That's incredibly telling.
Wow. So revenge.
Seems like it. Her father, meanwhile, leveraged this, telling her mother had been disappointed enough and that she shouldn't make things worse, effectively manipulating his daughter into complicity and further fostering her victim mentality.
Ugh. That earlier incident of severe bullying leading to expulsion demonstrates a deep-seated lack of empathy and accountability in the daughter long before the affair came to light. It suggests a pattern of behavior where she sees herself as a victim when faced with consequences. And her father, rather than fostering accountability, reinforced this narrative by enabling her actions and manipulating her further.
It truly highlights that insidious like father, like daughter theme we often see in deeply dysfunctional families. The daughter's consistent refusal to take accountability for the bullying, her unwavering perception of herself as the victim, and her steadfast alignment with the father who enables her behavior. It's deeply concerning. And the son, who lives with the mother, also hasn't forgiven his sister. He's choosing to distance himself, further fracturing the family unit.
That's understandable. It's chilling to see how patterns of manipulation and blame shifting can be passed down. The daughter's continued victimhood narrative, even for an act as severe as bullying another child to the brink. It's a clear indicator of her inability or unwillingness to confront her own role in causing harm. The son's decision to distance himself, despite his mother's attempts to encourage reconciliation, speaks volumes about the daughter's consistent character and the deep impact her actions have had. It's a painful reality when one child recognizes the toxicity of another and chooses self-preservation over a forced and ultimately unhealthy family unity.
Despite all this complexity, the mother, driven by this profound desire to fix things, agreed to joint therapy with her daughter.
Brave move.
Very. But the second session turned into a gutting experience. The daughter spent the entire time blaming her mother for ruining her childhood, refusing to acknowledge the harm she caused to the bullied child or her father's manipulation. She painted her father as perfect and her mother as the villain.
Oh, that's tough. And it raises an important question about the limits of therapy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when one party refuses accountability. As some experts in the comments pointed out, a therapist should facilitate productive dialogue, not simply provide a platform for one person to body slam the other with blame. Forgiveness and healing can only truly begin when hurts are acknowledged by all parties. When one individual is deeply committed to their narrative as a perpetual victim, genuine progress is severely hindered.
Exactly. It sounds like that's what happened here.
Yeah. The daughter's consistent refusal to acknowledge the harm she caused, both in the bullying incident and in hiding the affair. It created an insurmountable barrier to genuine healing. She was essentially using the therapy sessions as another arena to blame her mother, turning what should have been a space for growth into a reiteration of her victim narrative. It highlights a critical point. Therapy is only effective if all parties are genuinely willing to engage in self-reflection and take responsibility. Without that, it can become another tool for manipulation or further emotional damage.
So the mother, exhausted and heartbroken, realized she couldn't force someone to heal. Her daughter eventually quit joint therapy. Their relationship is now somewhat less tense, but surface level. The mother has come to accept that things might not ever fully heal in the way she initially hoped, but her door remains open.
That's a certain kind of strength, too. Acceptance.
Yeah. She's found a quiet peace by focusing on her own well-being, cultivating her supportive relationship with her new boyfriend, and celebrating her son's successes, like getting into an amazing college. This is a powerful, albeit sad, testament to the fact that you can't force someone to see the truth or take accountability. It's a shift from desperately trying to fix a broken relationship to choosing peace and protecting one's own emotional landscape.
And it highlights the profound strength required to accept what cannot be changed and to cultivate happiness within healthier relationships. Recognizing that sometimes unconditional love for a child doesn't mean unconditional tolerance of their harmful behavior. It's about drawing a line to protect your own integrity.
All right, moving on to the next story.
This is a really stark example of how unconscious bias can mess with the most fundamental relationship, right? Parent and child. So the original poster, OOP, he's a 29-year-old white man, married to a 30-year-old black woman, got 2 kids, a 5-year-old son, 3-year-old daughter. The son was born pretty early on, maybe a year into the marriage.
And right away you see it creeping in, the subtle but really powerful influence of appearance, societal expectations, you know?
Yeah.
The OOP notes right at the start that his son was noticeably darker than my wife and doesn't look half white.
Which is already a bit of a... Yeah.
It's a huge red flag, right? About his own ideas of what a biracial child is supposed to look like. And this perception, maybe not even conscious at first, it gets amplified. Friends, family start asking questions.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And even though he says he decided to trust his wife initially, those external voices plus his own internal bias, it just started to fester for years.
Then, okay, this is where it gets, well, incredibly sad, really, as you see the bias laid bare. Their daughter is born, and he describes her as looking just like me. She even has my blue eyes. And that became the catalyst.
The proof.
Exactly. It cemented his belief that the son wasn't his. It's like her appearance proved his paternity, which somehow reinforced the lack of proof he felt with his son. He even says this, and it's like, wow, I never realized how powerful it is to know a child is yours.
Oof.
I bonded with her easier because there wasn't the question of paternity dangling over our heads. My family bonded with her faster, too.
That just says everything, doesn't it? The language is so revealing.
It really is.
This immediate, easy bond with the lighter-skinned daughter who looked like him versus the years of doubt and eventually resentment towards his darker-skinned son. It's not just about genetics, it's deeply rooted in unconscious racial bias.
How so?
Well, that doesn't look half white comment. It suggests this really rigid, almost like a, paint mixer idea of what biracial kids should look like.
Right, like 50-50 mix.
Exactly, which totally ignores how genetics actually work. Kids can inherit traits from anywhere in the family tree, sometimes looking way more like one side than the other. It doesn't matter about the racial background mix. Genetics are complex.
Okay.
And the fact that his wife is black and the son looks, quote, noticeably darker than his wife, but that still makes him suspicious. That taps right into these awful, insidious stereotypes about black women.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, that somehow they're inherently deceptive or something. It's ugly. And he felt it was unfair. He had to care for someone else's child, resented his wife for this perceived betrayal, all based on an assumption rooted in, well, racism, frankly.
So, okay, 5 years, this goes on. 5 years of simmering resentment, these light comments he apparently made about his son's skin color.
Which his wife later calls out as microaggressions, right? These subtle digs.
Exactly. So after 5 years, he secretly gets a paternity test.
Secretly. Behind her back.
Yep. And the result, surprise, surprise.
The son is his.
The son is his. He says he felt relieved, relationship improved dramatically. He felt much closer to him now that I know he's mine. They even talk about having a third kid.
Wow.
Sounds like, okay, crisis averted, right? Weight lifted.
Well, yeah, on the surface maybe, but think about it. The relief wasn't from talking, from understanding. It was from a secret test, a piece of paper.
He needed external proof.
He needed that to confirm what his wife told him for 5 years. And that fleeting relief, it shattered the second he opened his mouth. Because it was built on secrets and distrust.
Because he confessed.
Yeah.
He told her. And he says he expected her to understand, because of how the son looked.
Which is just baffling.
Her reaction. She flipped out. Totally understandable. Immediately asks, did you ever doubt our daughter?
Mm-hmm. The cue question.
He says, no, absolutely not. And she calls him racist. Accuses him of making their son feel unloved for no reason for all those years. Imagine hearing that.
Yeah, the pain there is just palpable. And why would he expect understanding? His denial is incredible. He calls her claims bull and insists I treated him as though he were.
Trying to justify it.
He frames her reaction as overreacting, saying she's furious for not trusting her and for denying my son because he's dark. But it's not an overreaction, it's betrayal. Imagine finding out your partner, for years, held this fundamental distrust. Not just of you, but of your child, based on skin color. For her, this wasn't just about a test. It blew up their whole relationship.
She had to rethink everything.
Exactly. Every light comment, every little hesitation he ever showed, suddenly it all clicks into place through this new horrible lens. It reveals this pattern of microaggressions rooted in his bias and his dismissal of her feelings. That's gaslighting.
How so?
He's basically telling her her feelings are wrong, extreme, irrational, trying to make her doubt her own reality. It's a form of manipulation, and it's deeply damaging.
So the fallout was immediate, stark. She wanted out, wanted to take the kids as soon as quarantine lifted. He's banished to the sofa, hoping she'll calm down.
Which shows he still doesn't get it.
No. And the online community, Reddit, they delivered a unanimous asshole verdict, just slammed him.
Yeah. What do they say?
Oh, things like, his actions were racist and paranoid, that he neglected his son was a bad father. One comment put it perfectly. You let yourself fester quietly for 5 years and likely hurt your wife and son in the process.
Mm-hmm. Hits the nail on the head.
Another one pointed out, the idea that the lighter colored child was proof that your darker skinned son is someone else's kid is rooted in racist ideology. They saw right through it.
It's powerful when the community reflects back what the person can't see in themselves. And they're right about the psychological impact, that secret doubt. It creates an emotional distance.
Even if he thought he was hiding it.
Oh yeah, kids are sponges. They pick up on everything. Even if he thought he treated them the same, that internal resentment, that question of paternity dangling, it would leak out.
How? Like subtly?
Yeah, subtle ways, tone of voice, a slight hesitation before a hug, maybe favoring the daughter without realizing it. Kids feel that stuff deeply. It shapes their sense of worth. And for the wife, her whole reality shifted. She had to question their entire shared history.
Wow. So the consequences were long-term. Devastating, really. About a month later, an update. They're separated. He's living with his parents, barely sees the kids. Says his daughter's taking it hardest. He sounds heartbroken, wants his family back. He does admit, I didn't want to hold myself accountable before. And he realizes, quote, "I did treat my son differently due to his skin color when you strip it down to its roots." Expresses shame, worries her family thinks he's racist.
Okay, that sounds like progress, maybe.
He also talks about needing to be more aware because of craziness going on in the world, fear of his son being racially profiled.
Okay, wait, that last part. It sounds a bit like an intellectual acknowledgement. Sure, that's a first step. But it doesn't quite feel like deep accountability yet. Is his focus on his shame, how he looks, or on the pain he actually caused?
That's a good question.
It feels a bit like it's still about him. And the racial profiling comment, while valid concern for his son's future, feels almost convenient here, like a way to frame his past actions or his new awareness, rather than truly grappling with the internal harm he did. Performative awareness, maybe? Not real empathy?
Yeah, maybe. And the final update, almost 3 years later, confirms it. Maybe. Divorce finalized early 2022. They actually got back together for nearly a year, tried counseling, both of them.
Oh, wow, they tried.
Yeah. But he says she could never forgive me enough to trust me. They became roommates. No intimacy. He got depressed, quit his job, still misses her, what we had. It's just sad.
It is sad. But trust, once broken that fundamentally, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. And notice his language even now.
What do you mean?
He describes his daughter still as my mini-me. She loves me almost as much as I love her. That clear favoritism is still there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, compared to the son.
Right. The son is very athletic, and he's seen more of myself in him than I did in his youth. It's like transactional, based on traits he values. It's not the same deep personal connection he expresses with the daughter.
Mini-me versus great kid.
Exactly. That preference, rooted in the original bias, it's still subtly there. And despite everything, the divorce, the pain he still reflects, if I hadn't needed a paternity test, they might have another sibling. Needed. He still frames it as a need.
Not a want or desire driven by bias.
Precisely. He still hasn't fully owned why he did it, the racism behind it. He hasn't truly internalized the impact.
And the online comments picked up on that too, right? Even in the later updates.
Oh, yeah. People pointed out the me focus, the blame shifting, like saying her world had been turned upside down by her own parents instead of I turned her world upside down.
Yeah.
Using passive language, still claiming he needed the test.
That failure to really take accountability, to empathize, it sealed the marriage's fate.
It's the core issue. He couldn't move past acknowledging fault to feeling genuine remorse and understanding her pain. He expected her to just calm down from a massive betrayal. And the impact on the kids, especially the son, who apparently still doesn't know about the test.
God, I hope he never finds out.
It's a heavy burden for the mom.
Oh.
And yeah, comments suggested he might go no contact someday when he does learn. It's almost inevitable, isn't it?
Probably.
But you have to admire the wife's resilience. Choosing her and her kids' well-being over a relationship built on such shattered trust. It's a powerful, though painful choice. This whole story just starkly shows how unchecked bias, especially racial bias, can just poison everything.
Wow. Okay, that first story was heavy.
Yeah.
Dealing with unconscious bias. But this next one, it takes us into even darker territory, truly horrifying. It shows how bias, in this case, maybe a bias towards family loyalty above all else, can enable just horrific abuse. And it highlights massive systemic failures too.
Yeah, this one's rough.
So the OOP here is a mandated reporter, someone legally required to report suspected abuse. And she discovers something deeply disturbing. Her sister-in-law, let's call her Anne, is applying to host a foreign exchange student.
Okay.
But she deliberately left her husband, Sean, completely off the application.
Oh, that's immediately suspicious. Why?
Well, here's why. Sean has a very, very troubling history. 2 felony arrests, 2019 and 2023, for possession and distribution of child PN.
Oh my God.
And it gets worse. Before that, he was fired from a high school job for alleged inappropriate contact with a student. And apparently, he's had ongoing inappropriate relationships with underage girls online for his entire 15-plus year marriage to Anne. Started right after they got married.
This is a clear pattern, a serial predator.
Absolutely. And what's just stomach-turning is the OOP has her own past incident with Sean from years ago, back in 2009.
What happened?
Her daughter, only 5 or 6 then, came running up from the basement saying, Sean told me to touch his worm.
Oh.
At the time, they questioned him, questioned the daughter, didn't know his history, and tragically felt satisfied nothing physical happened.
Sure.
They never let their kids be alone with him again after that. It was a red flag, but they didn't grasp the full horror until later.
Hindsight is brutal.
Yeah, and apparently he also took inappropriate photos of Anne's 10-year-old sister sleeping once.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't just online stuff, it was escalating.
And the family, and what's horrifying here is the enablement. You said Anne applied to host while living with him.
Get this. Anne divorced Sean after the last arrest, but it was purely a paper divorce.
Meaning?
Meaning it was just for legal protection because she's a teacher and was afraid of losing her job. They never stopped living together. She didn't even change her name.
Unbelievable. So career over child safety.
Seems like it. And Sean, he faced no consequences, just financial. His in-laws paid his legal bills. And somehow, outrageously, he avoided having to register as a sex offender.
How is that even possible? That's a massive system failure right there.
Yeah.
Plea deals, loopholes.
Must be. And the worst part, he still lives with Anne and their own minor kids, an 11-year-old boy, a 14-year-old girl.
Okay, so Anne isn't just enabling. This is active complicity. Negligence on a staggering scale. And the OOP, being a mandated reporter, she had to act.
She did. With incredible courage, really.
Yeah.
She contacts the local exchange program coordinator, lays out Sean's history. In fact, he still lives there.
And the coordinator.
Initially, horrified, expressed gratitude, seemed promising, but then it all went sideways.
Yeah.
Anne freaks out, absolutely furious, accuses the OOP of breaking her daughter's heart. The daughter didn't even know about the application.
Wow. Deflection much.
Totally. Calls the OOP hateful, petty, unchristian. Anne's convinced only immediate family know about Sean's arrests, completely ignoring public records. She's living in denial. Even Anne's mother threatens the OOP.
So the whole family system is circling the wagons, protecting the abuser, protecting their fantasy world.
It's like,
This is textbook denial and projection. Anne isn't just enabling Sean her actions, trying to bring an exchange student into that house. It sounds like she's actively trying to procure a victim for him.
God, that's a chilling thought.
Especially someone from another country, maybe doesn't speak the language well, no support system, isolated,
Yeah.
vulnerable, and that good Christian deflection, classic tactic, using piety to shield horrific behavior.
Disgusting.
And Anne's friends, family, even the coordinator at first, they're prioritizing appearances, loyalty, friendship over a child's safety. The coordinator, who was Anne's friend, actually tried to push through the hosting, claimed Sean would move out.
A blatant lie.
Yeah, OOP says Anne's plan was all along for him to be there, and Anne tried to get Sean to be a chaperone after his first arrest.
Seriously.
That shows a level of complicity that's just staggering. Some commenters online, trying to make sense of it, drew comparisons to figures like Karla Homolka, suggesting Anne wasn't just enabling, she was actively involved in finding victims.
That's horrifying to even consider.
It points to a terrifying possibility, doesn't it?
Unbelievable. The scale of the enabling.
Yeah.
But the OOP, thankfully, she didn't give up.
Good for her. What did you do?
Escalated it. Emailed the corporate office of the exchange program, sent proof Anne's admission she lied on the form, lack of references who knew about Sean's arrests. She laid it all out. Persistence paid off. After she explained everything in detail, sent arrest reports, emphasized she's a mandated reporter, the magnitude of the situation.
Right.
The director, who was Anne's friend, finally backed down.
Why? Morality finally kicked in.
Nope. Liability, the director agreed the liability was too great.
Oh, so.
Denied.
So risk management, not ethics. Grim, but sadly, often how systems work. Liability forces action when morals fail.
Exactly.
That coordinator's initial reluctance, willingness to believe Anne's lies, it shows how personal connections and just sheer lack of critical thinking can lead to disaster. And the family excuses, Sean's mom saying he has Peter Pan syndrome.
Right, like he's just an overgrown teenager.
It's infantilizing him, weaponized denial to absolve him of responsibility. This family is drowning in denial, choosing to ignore reality to protect their image, protect the abuser. It's that missing reasons thing, actively avoiding the truth because it's too painful.
Even if it means sacrificing kids.
Especially if it means sacrificing other people's kids, potentially.
And the cost for the OOP for speaking out.
Significant. She's blocked them all now, cut ties, faced threats from Anne's mom, disappointment from her own MIL. But she says rightly, these are natural consequences.
It takes immense courage to disrupt that kind of system.
It really does. And this story just blows open the societal issue, right? How often abusers get away with it, especially if they seem upstanding or have money. Like in this town, apparently.
Yeah, comment mentioned the town kind of normalizing pedo stuff.
Which is horrifying. It speaks to that collective denial, that refusal to believe someone good or loved could do terrible things. People prefer the comfortable lie.
And the kids. Sean and Anne's own kids, still living there.
It's deeply worrying. What's the long-term impact on them? It's a tragic legacy of enablement. And it ties right back to our theme. unchecked bias. Here, a bias for family loyalty so strong it overrides basic child safety.
Okay, after that chilling story about enabling.
All right, moving on to the next story.
It's from the Best of Redditor Updates subreddit, titled, "I brought my sister to a barbecue with our close friends, and their husband crossed the line." So our goal here is really to unpack this personal story, look at the community's take, and explore, how trust gets shattered, the difficulty of confronting bad behavior, and those ripple effects on friendships.
Yeah, what's really striking, I think, is how this whole thing, just observed and told by the original poster, it sort of peels back these layers of deception. It makes you question who you can actually trust, right? And it really highlights these incredibly tough choices people face when someone they know, someone who seems, well, perfect, suddenly shows this really disturbing side.
Okay, so let's paint the picture. You've got this 27-year-old Italian woman. She's living in Italy with her German fiancé. And they become really close friends with this couple in their 40s, a New Zealander husband, Italian wife. They seem like the perfect family, Lots of shared activities, poker nights, volleyball, barbecues. Real trust there, it seems. Then the poster's 19-year-old sister comes to visit. She brings her to one of these barbecues, and this is where it gets, well, really uncomfortable. Later that night, the fiancé tells her he saw the husband standing very close to the sister, hand too low on her back. Not just once, but twice. And okay, sure, everyone was apparently very drunk, but it was still enough to really bother him.
Right. And that raises the critical point. What happens when that little alarm bell, that unsettling feeling, actually gets confirmed? Because the sister, after, a bit of hesitation, she broke down, admitted he had touched her inappropriately. And what's really key here is her immediate reaction, this immense guilt. She didn't want to ruin our night or break our friendship. That's such a common thing, focusing on others, not the trauma itself. So the poster felt, understandably, heartbroken, shocked, like she did not protect her sister, felt like you just can't trust nobody nowadays. And interestingly, her fiancé's first move was to decide to confront the husband, but alone and calmly.
Okay, so after that initial post, and Reddit comments were pushing them like, you have to tell the wife. They made a really tough call, the poster and her fiance. They had a serious talk with the sister first. She was angry, disgusted, but she wanted the truth out, for both the husband and the wife to know. So they decided to confront the couple together in the group chat. Laid it all out, what happened, how it affected the sister, the feeling of betrayal, and they made sure to mention the fiance saw it too.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, the wife's response, well, that's incredibly revealing, isn't it? She replies, but privately, says she's sorry the sister was uncomfortable. Notice the wording, uncomfortable. But then immediately pivots, saying they shouldn't end everything because of this. Claims her husband will respond, he never does. And she finishes with, best of luck, goodbye. Just like that. That lack of a real apology, any ownership. It made the original poster think the wife already knew something. And then silence. The couple just stopped all contact, breaking the usual routine. It really makes you think about the role of an enabler, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the Reddit comments, they really jumped on the wife's reaction too. Added another layer. A lot of people were saying she absolutely knew something, like this probably wasn't the first time, that she was actively protecting him, maybe even complicit. Some even threw out a darker theory. Maybe the couple was looking for a unicorn, a third person for a threesome. And the husband's actions were like a failed predatory attempt at grooming. That's speculative, of course, but it shows how people interpreted his boundary pushing.
And, while some theories are dark like that, it's also worth considering other angles. Some commenters suggested maybe the wife's response came from denial or deep shame or just how incredibly hard it is to face the reality that your partner might be a predator. It shows how complex abuse dynamics can be. People often struggle to leave or confront abusers. Even the confrontation method, that group text, sparked debate. Yes, it gives you documentation, proof, but many felt it just doesn't have the same weight as face-to-face. Makes it easier to just disengage, avoid real accountability. The whole thing is just a stark reminder, really. Appearances can be so deceiving, and protecting people often means facing some really, really uncomfortable truths, even when it's painful.
So wrapping this up, what did this mean for you, the listener? I think this deep dive really lays bare how fragile trust actually is, and it highlights those often hidden struggles people face when they're betrayed by someone they thought they knew well.
Yeah, it forces us to think beyond just the predator's actions, right? To consider the roles of bystanders and maybe even enablers. How do we, as people, as communities, Balance wanting peace and quiet with the need to actually confront injustice. What's our responsibility when we see someone protecting harmful behavior? What does standing up for someone truly entail? And it leaves us with this powerful, kind of unsettling question. How often do we miss what's really behind the mask just because, well, we want to believe the best? And what happens when that wishful thinking ends up enabling real harm?
Our final deep dive looks at bias from a different but equally damaging angle. Bias born from personal trauma.
Still heartbreaking, but a different dynamic.
This starts with a truly awful accusation.
Yeah.
The OOP, a 32-year-old woman, finds her mom, 60, super conservative, accusing the OOP's husband of abusing their 3-year-old daughter.
Oh, wow. A mother accusing her son-in-law?
Yeah, and the husband is 33, has tattoos, piercings, maybe fits a type in the mom's mind. But the core reason for the accusation, it's complex.
What's the mood of it?
It stems directly from the husband revealing his own history of childhood sexual abuse.
Oh, no. Don't tell them.
Yep. The mother has this deeply ingrained, dangerous belief. Children that were abused go on to abuse their own children.
That stereotype, it's so damaging and largely untrue. And to accuse a survivor based on that, it's incredibly re-victimizing.
Horrible, right? Imagine going through that trauma and then having your mother-in-law accuse you of doing it.
The psychological impact would be immense. Reliving a pain, but now cast as the monster.
And the trigger for this specific accusation, it was totally innocent. The toddler just said, her privates hurt.
Okay.
Turns out, she just needed to poop. Common toddler confusion. They're still learning anatomy, words for things.
Right. That highlights such an important point using correct anatomical terms. Penis, vulva, not vague words like privates. It empowers kids to communicate clearly, prevents these misunderstandings.
Exactly. But the mother's bias, maybe fueled by her own issues, just jumped to the worst conclusion. Fear trumped logic. The husband was, understandably, so hurt and furious.
I bet.
But the OOP, thankfully, she's a former mandated reporter.
Ah, so she has training.
Yeah. She knows the signs, assessed the situation, saw no reason to suspect abuse. She and her husband have been really proactive, raised our daughter in the most loving and trusting way, taught her about anatomy and boundaries.
Good for them.
The husband actually insisted on it because the thought of his child going through what he did is unthinkable. It's such a healthy contrast to the denial we saw before. They're breaking cycles, not repeating them.
Absolutely. Her training gave her the tools to respond responsibly, not panic. And she set clear boundaries immediately, right?
Yep. Confronted her mom, sent messages about how wrong and hurtful it was, demanded no contact between mom and husband for now. She even sent links debunking the victim becomes abuser myth.
Smart. Educating while protecting.
But she's also worried, understandably, that her mom might intentionally or unintentionally make my daughter believe something happened that didn't.
That's a valid fear. Bias, even from fear, can really twist things. Is there any hope for the mom?
Well, interestingly, the mother agreed to see a counselor the OOP recommended as a mediator and admitted she experienced some things that she was not ready to talk about yet.
Ah. So her own unaddressed trauma is likely driving this, projecting her fears.
Seems very likely. Which brings us back to that core bias. The mother's trauma and the victim becomes abuser fallacy.
Which needs debunking, always. The stats show, yes, there's a correlation, a higher proportion of victims among perpetrators than in the general population.
Okay.
Specifically, one study found male CSA survivors were over 8 times more likely than non-victims to later perpetrate. Which sounds scary.
It does.
But the crucial part everyone misses, 95% of CSA victims did not go on to have a sexual offense record. 95%. The vast majority do not become abusers. History of abuse is a risk factor for a tiny minority, not a destiny.
That context is critical.
It's everything. Perpetuating the myth is so harmful, and the mom's other belief that only men can abuse children, also wrong. Female abusers exist. These flawed assumptions compound the damage.
And accusations like this.
They re-victimize survivors, ruin reputations, destroy trust. Like one comment said, this kind of thing is one of the reasons many victims are afraid to talk. It silences people.
But there's maybe a path forward here. This OOP supporting her mom getting help while holding her accountable.
That's the hope, isn't it? It represents a healthier way, empathy for the mother's past victimhood, but zero tolerance for her current harmful actions fueled by bias. It's about breaking the cycle. It's painful, but necessary for her own family's health. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. We hope it gave you plenty to consider.